All right, as everyone goes on live podcasts and all your podcast stations, this is Dr. Paul, and I am talking with a dear family friend, Jenny, but to all you guys going to know her as something else. So you guys can't call her Jenny from around the block, so any of that good stuff any way you want. But I want her to introduce herself, please. Jenny, please introduce yourself to Bridges Live and my audience.
I'm Jenny Johnson. How are you all?
We're doing good. Go ahead. Can you hear me? Go. Introduce yourself.
Yes. So I'm Jenny Johnson. Hi, everybody out there. I am, just a little my background, I would imagine. I am a practicing psychotherapist in New York State and in Minnesota. I am the CEO of newly formed fee-for-service private practice called For Love and Psych. And I've been in the field of mental health for, longer than I can think of, and hopefully my career will be even longer. So probably the last 10 years or so, I would say. Mostly, I started in acute mental health, servicing hospitals, patients within crisis care, and then have recently, in the last several years, formed my private practice.
Well, I'm happy to call you little niece because we have a large family, and for those who've listened to Bridges Live, who know me at Bridges Live, yes, there's prettier side to the family than my ugly face, and this has happened to be one of. We're just so proud of you, of all the work you put in since you've been a little girl. It's just great to see you develop into this. But so tell people about your company and why you started it.
Oh, sure. So I started For Love and Psych, as I said, as a private practice with the goal in mind to just work frivolously to care for people who are needing mental health services, specifically those people of color who are often quite marginalized, oppressed, and who have a sordid relationship with psychiatry as a whole and with mental health because of the systemic oppression that has befallen them over the years. So there is a mistrust, and oftentimes what we find is that there are not professionals who look like you and I, Unc, and we need those bodies out there to care for people so that they can be treated by someone who they can relate to. So the mission is destigmatizing mental health, destigmatizing the act of accessing mental health, and of just highlighting those who are marginalized and letting them know that there's a place they can go to get care from someone who looks just like them.
Before we get into a lot of other stuff, where can people reach you, and how can I know I put your stuff on the my YouTube channel, and they can get your For the Love of Psych there too, but can they call you, can they email you, what can they do?
Sure. So they can reach me. My email is info@forloveandpsych.com. My website is recently formed and up. So if you want to take a look at that, you can just search www.forloveandpsych.com. I prefer you reach out to me via email. I'm also on various social media outlets. So you can reach me on Instagram, on Facebook, Pinterest, and I tweet as well. So feel free to find me on any one of those mediums, and I will be very responsive.
You know, as far as the Black community, we know they're marginalized. We know there's a systemic issue. But what have you noticed, like, that really kind of turns your hair curly, that just goes, I can't believe this is still happening? What are some of those things?
Well, I think, some of the things that probably are the most concerning to me are that there are not enough of the satellite alternative outpatient care systems to treat people in a timely fashion. It's not that they don't exist. It's that the access to them is very limited, and that it can take quite a bit of time to get patients or clients connected to those services. And many times, and you know this very well, Unc, when someone is in a crisis or when someone is really struggling, time is of the essence. So they are going to go to the emergency room. They are going to seek care at an urgent care, and then, be evaluated under those circumstances at their worst space ever, and then generally the level of care that's recommended is inpatient psychiatry, right? Which is terrifying to many people. This idea that I'm going to be locked away, I'm going to be forced on a unit where they're going to say that I have to take psychotropic medications, that I've got to go to bed at a certain time, wake up at a certain time, and be around strangers that I don't know who have, levels of acuity of illness that doesn't match my own. So it's extremely frightening.
And I have to leave kids. I'm probably a single parent. Okay, let's just go. There's not like this is a long reach. I'm probably a single mom, right? I'm probably an out of work dad, right? Or I'm probably not doing as well as I would like. So going to the hospital isn't really going to be good for me in any case. So how do I get help? I don't have the insurance. I don't have the money.
Financially, you're in a bind. If you're away, you can't work. Or, for my people who are a little bit more isolated, because that happens in the Black community as well. We're not all married off and having partners, right? Some of us live alone, and we have animals who we dearly love who we care for each day. And so just being in your home and someone coming and saying, no, you've got to come to the hospital, it can be very distressing.
Blacks have been going through trauma, and I say this, you've heard me people say this over and over. I think if you're Black, you need a therapist. I think if you don't think you need a therapist, you need to go see a therapist so a therapist can bop you on the head and say, you're good to go. I just think Black America needs a mental checkup. I think if you can go get your car tuned up, I think Black people should go get their health tuned up, right? Again, someone got shot again in Minneapolis again. This is not something new to us. This is not even something that it's so common. We say, here it is again. This is traumatizing to Black America. And yet you are treating people who are in trauma-afflicted relationships and trauma-afflicted from their past history. How is this connecting it all to just total pain?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you just spoke about, Dante Wright, who was just murdered again by law enforcement. And again, when we talk about institutions, right? When we talk in general about institutions and systemic racism, and specifically violence enacted against Black people, we can see that in different forms, right? Obviously, we can see it very clearly in the interactions with law enforcement, right? That there are these very contentious vibe that exists between police and Black men. Somehow they are seen as being, negative and, overtly aggressive, violent individuals. And so they are handled, they are managed, they are interacted with under that scope of that label. And so, consistently they're brutalized. Same can be said for many institutions. Same can be said for mental health institutions and the way that they used to be prior to, obviously, deinstitutionalization. That Black men are seen as stronger, bigger, more able to deal with pain than any other race, Black women as well. And so they can be medicated at much higher dosage. They can be, treated in general, not held with the level of sensitivity and compassion and care that they need. And I think a part of this whole pain that you're talking about is that we live in a society where we can see as Black people the iconography of racism and grief and us having violence enacted against us so clearly. But America says, oh, it's something that you've brought on upon yourself. So that even though we have that those iconography, those very clear images of, and they're video images, right? They're photo images, all of this of a man literally being murdered, being choked to death. And yet, despite that iconography being very clear, you have a large consensus of human beings who say that people who look like you and I are not being murdered at those higher rates. And that is a deeply traumatic thing, to be invalidated in that way. It's deeply, deeply traumatic to have your experience, to know your experience, understand your experience, have those who look like you cower and be in fear about that experience. And then the world says, it's in your head. It's in your mind.
You know, I belong to several organizations with how we mentor men, how we mentor people, Black America, whether it be young men, older men, or in just couples, right? This mental health, there's no one else who is talking to the positive Black person except for mental health and mentorship. And there's not enough for either one.
It's true. And we've got to be a part of doing that. We've got to be a part of filling that gap, because that's the only way we're going to get the level of inclusion that we need. You know, I hear people say all the time, I don't know how to find a provider. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Sometimes what you have to do is you have to build it. You have to go off and you have to educate yourself via YouTube, right? Via all these social media outlets and such. You have to take some initiative, and when you can't find it, then you can build yourself into it, and you can be what other people need, and you can show other people the way. And that's a part of what we're doing now in Hope Conference that is coming up on Saturday the 17th, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right? It's a bunch of women that I know, a bunch of professionals, specifically Dr. Tiana Rogers, who is this incredible researcher and has built her own organization, Mended Hope, and Candice Elizabeth, who is also a consultant and has built her own, is the CEO of Sparking TLC, as well as Dr. Toya Sherman, who is a life coach and has built her own as well. It's Possible LLC. So these women were all co-sponsoring this Hope Conference to hopefully reach out to high impact women of all colors, of all ranges, right? But obviously we also want to ensure that we are, as a coalition, reaching those Black women, those women of color, for sure. But just to help them in areas where they're feeling like they don't know the tools. You know, they have gotten to a certain degree of success in their lives, whether that be their careers, right, where a lot of Black women excel. They're of the most educated, right, and generally tend to work themselves into the ground. So professionally, they do fantastic, but in their relationships, they struggle to open their hearts and to covet and to support these men like yourself who are struggling in the world because of what it looks like and because of the danger to them, right? It can be hard to, if you are a Black woman, to support a Black man.
I actually feel that Black men have let, and I've said this with my men conversation called Black Coffee Conversation, and I know us Black men collectively in a whole, we have let the Black woman down. We've let the Black woman down because we failed to say we needed help. We failed to get help. We failed to let down our guard so we can be open and honest with what we are not. And not what we want, but where we are going or where we haven't been yet. We have not been completely honest with ourselves, so it's hard to have those relationships completely where we can support the Black woman, and we leave you guys out, the Black woman. And people, I'm talking collectively. I'm not talking about the single man or the few who hold on and uplift. And I know you have a great man, and so I know he's in the wings listening. So I want to say hello to him. But
I'll tell him now.
Okay, great. But what I'm saying is collectively, we've left you out, so now you can be segregated against and ostracized in the white community, because they still do that to our Black women. And our Black men, if we feel like we step up, we actually get arrested or get downsized. But we know recently DMX has passed on.
Yes,
and this is
his soul, that lovely soul.
Yeah, and it brings up a comment in my head, is that DMX is the perfect Black male example. A lot of pain, a lot of trouble past, needed help, was getting some help, has had some successes, but up and down. And now we are left mourning him. But we know there are people who are alive to this day who are in just as much pain, and we have not done very much or done very little. How can we do more?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Can you repeat that last part? I kind of cut out.
Yeah, how can we do more for those people who are like DMX, who have struggled so hard, and we see them, but we ignore? How can we do more for our people?
Absolutely. And well, I think it's about, specifically where DMX was concerned, there was unfortunately, there was the comorbidity of substance abuse, right, which can be rather complicated, specifically in this country, because as we all know, substance abuse treatment, generally speaking, is a voluntary protocol. Unless there are somehow kind of legal issues that exist, then treatment can be mandated. But even then, it's still your choice, right? Because you can choose to be incarcerated over having treatment. But I think the ways in which it is pivotal that we show up for and help those within our circle thrive and assess their issues is just in having candid conversations with them about how they're doing. I couldn't tell you how many times people tell me each day that they don't check in with themselves. They don't take emotional inventory. They just go about their day. Like, my day starts, and it doesn't matter if I wake up anxious or if I wake up kind of in misery. It's just the day's got to go. I've got to power through. And I think a lot of what kind of befell DMX, and I don't know his story very well, but from what you see, there are a lot of people around you, a lot of people who probably dearly love and support you, but maybe to some degree the conversation became more about the music and about the success than about the person, than about the man. And when that happens, when we forget that people are not just commodities and resources, he was beautiful, highly talented man, but he was much more than those resources, right? Much more than that talent. He was a human being who deserved dignity and care, and who needed to likely be reminded pretty consistently that no matter how far he fell, he was still respected, and he deserves kindness and compassion. And if he couldn't want it for himself, then someone else, sometimes we got to want it a little bit more, and we got to push a little bit harder to ensure that there's care in whatever form it comes. So care in, was it a psychologist that he needed? Was it a psychotherapist like myself that he needed? Was it just a companion, a friend that could be there and could be someone, to talk to? There are different levels of mental health care, and I think that is a part of what needs to be more transparent.
Pain produces violence in different forms, whether it be screaming, punching, but it's still violence.
Right.
There is violence coming in the streets of America from our pain. If you could help douse those flames that is brewing, what would you say to the people who are in pain?
I would validate their experience to the utmost degree. I think, where we have people, in this country right now, just in general, like we talked about, there is this pervasive edge and fear about loss of life for no reason. Loss of life because I'm stopped at a traffic stop. Loss of life because, I spoke to the wrong person. Loss of life because I couldn't pay a bill. I don't, whatever. Like the level of fear that just has run rampant in this country is a major issue, and that fear needs to be validated, because in that invalidation is the suffering. You ever tell yourself, like, I'm not sad, when you are sad?
Right.
When you do keep yourself from crying, when you do want to cry, it's the most painful experience in the world. It's an invalidation of your emotions. And this is what many people within this country are dealing with right now, with no money, right, with no prospects for money because the economy is just in a whole way in the midst of this global pandemic, and they're being told you have to get back to it, get back to paying your rent just like you were, get
just
back
like
to paying those bills just like you were. Those student loans, don't worry, they're going to be coming right around the corner, right? We're pushing taxes off for maybe a month, but you know that's all we've got to offer. When we see that miracles are moved for other people, and miracles are moved when the 1% is having like a minute dilemma, it's infuriating, and a part of the pain you speak of, and I loved so how eloquently you just put this idea that pain breeds violence, because in my field, obviously in the field of mental health, an indicator of someone being able to take their own life is this understanding that they could take someone else's. If you could inflict pain to a very high degree, then you are capable of inflicting that same pain on yourself. So these things are all tied together, and we need to be managing them much better. If I was just to put a blanket over the world to some degree, especially the marginalized, that blanket would just say, I hear you, I understand you, I'm here for you, and no matter your circumstances or what you've had to do in order to survive, there's no judgment. I hear a lot of stories, and some of them are, they're describing some of the worst parts of humanity that people have been through. The things that they've had to do just to survive, being raped by their uncle, or by, physically assaulted, while they were at their workspace. The things people have to do to get over those types of things can be really ugly. And so they have shame in coming and seeking help. And so I guess, I would validate, and I would show understanding and compassion. And
Thank you, Miss Jeannie Johnson, my niece. Thank you so much. And I just also want to add to what you said so beautifully, is that you are not alone, people. I don't want you to feel like you're ever alone. We're here. People are here who love you, care for you, and would love to help you. But don't do this by yourself. And I understand the pandemic has separated us in a tremendous way, but please reach out, reach up, and ask for help. Because we don't know who you are until you call Miss Jeannie Johnson. You got to call her. We're not soothsayers. We don't look into a magic ball and say, I gotta go to Brooklyn. It just doesn't work that way. So please reach out.
Yeah, so many platforms that are telehealth. Telepsychiatry is a booming field. So if you can't leave the house and you need something more affordable, utilize there are so many platforms. I can name it. Talkspace. I've done some consulting work for BetterHelp. Sorry, I've done some consulting work for. Like, some of these are very, very well priced agencies that can help, and are big platforms.
Well, I know you got to go. You got a busy evening. I want to say thank you so much, and great. Is your thing going to be telecast on the 17th? Yeah.
Yes, it will. It is a webinar, and then it will be produced again afterwards. Like, it's going to be recorded, and then I think it will be broadcast. I don't know that it's live on the day of the weekend, but definitely the webinar will be available for sure. Please stay safe, stay happy, and God bless. And I'm so proud of you. Thank you so much. I know you got to run. And thank everyone for listening to Bridges Live from Miss Jeannie Johnson. Please contact her if you want to talk to her more. You can always get her website at forloveandpsych.com. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.